Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. Thrilled you're joining us today as we're doing this series on women in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has been an area that I've been interested in. It is up and coming. It's here to stay. There's layers of protection. And I've always said about myself, if I'm not learning, is the day that I just lay down horizontal and I'm done. So I said, well, there's a lot I want to know about this. I want to learn. I want to grow. This is the way the world is going. We need to know more. So hence, I have the honor and pleasure of Jessica Robin joining me today. Jessica is the CEO of PurePoint International, where she's helping CEOs and C-level leaders bridge the gap among data security, cyber risk, and privacy. PurePoint International provides cybersecurity consulting and training for financial services, insurance, and other middle market global companies that are from startup to 350 million in revenue. Jessica's vision is to create a different kind of security company, and this is where we're going to be talking to Jessica today. She has earned the company and awards for international affairs and women security from Jaycees, Philippine New York chapter, Philanthropy Company of the Year award in 2021. Jessica is a woman in the know and a woman who sits in a position to continue to look at things as they are today and where they're going. So Jessica, thank you for taking the time to join me on Her Success Story.
Hey, great. So happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to have this talk with you today around cybersecurity. So
I'm always interested, where did your passion around this start from? Like, why cybersecurity? Where did this drive for you personally?
So when I was a kid, I always knew that security was the work that I wanted to do in the world. The question was always, how would this happen? But I was that young person that was a part of the safety patrol in the 5th grade. In the 8th grade, I read all of the Nancy Drew books at our school library. And I remember just thinking, wow, I would love to be able to go around helping people like Nancy Drew. Being a product of the 80s, I saw Matthew Broderick in War Games and was just like, I want to be a hacker. So I really grew up with this focus on protecting people and wanting to help people be safe and thinking about how to integrate computers into that form of thinking, and also thinking about how to really serve people the way that I felt Nancy Drew was doing. So my parents were great about putting me into engineering camps when I was younger. Now, of course, an engineering camp is very different than the cyber camps that exist today. But my parents were wonderful in really helping to encourage this passion that I had. And then I went from there. I can definitely say that I never in my life thought that I would own a business doing the work that I'm doing now, but and I even thought that maybe, there'd be other aspects of security that I would be doing. But what was absolutely clear, no matter what, is that I would be doing security of some sort in my life. And that's really how I got to where I am today.
So share with me a little bit, because one thing you just said, which is so pertinent, never imagined myself as a business owner, and here you are today. So what drove? It's so easy, and I'll say this, and I've spoken to many people. I've talked many people out of opening businesses. I've been a business owner for over 25 years now. I'm very good at talking to people. I was like, do you actually know what you're doing? We might get frustrated with the day job, right, and the paycheck, but in essence, there's a finality about being very clear about roles and responsibilities, and you receive a paycheck for it, versus taking the higher risk and building a business. So what drove you to do that?
Yeah, it was. So actually happened to be taking some time off from work from that job with clear roles and responsibilities and all that consistent paycheck coming in. And what I knew is it was time for something different, but I didn't know what that was. My background is also in international affairs, and I was thinking, well, maybe I would have an opportunity to do work doing things that I always thought that I would actually always do as well. So maybe working for the UN or working in some sort of international capacity, even working for the federal government. And I have a twin sister who does that. So for me, thinking that was very, 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 very easy and what is the word I'm looking for? It was very accessible for me.
Right.
And so
that makes sense.
It's very accessible. So what I'm doing now was not accessible. It wasn't even in my frame of mind, but I happened to be taking time off, and I was taking, for me, what it was just like, what I would just say, a pilgrimage to India and Nepal at the time, really wanting to step away, get into nature. And I was there, and it was, I had a dream. It was really as simple as that. And I really set the intention for that trip about what would be the next phase of my life. What was I really called here to do? What was my purpose? And at the end of it, it was creating a more consciously secure world. And so then the response to that was, well, then how does this happen? How do I really
right?
think
How do
about
you do that's a big undertaking. Like it's
right.
like, oh, okay, so I'm just going to create a more conscious,
right.
I can't even say it. It's like, okay, like, oh, my goal and desire is to create a more consciously secure world. And as one woman, I'm going to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Where do we start? Is there a book on that?
Right. Exactly. Where is there a book on that? And so what was at the intersection of this was working with women who were maybe and had more challenging experiences in life, and helping to support just women feeling safer in the world. It was about working internationally. It was about thinking about not only our work, our businesses, and how do we keep our businesses safe, but how do we keep our communities safe, and how do we keep us safe as individuals? And then, of course, bringing in which up to this point in my career, I hadn't really done much of. But all of these things that had been little seedlings that had been planted in my life from the moment I was young, wanting to international, having a master's degree in international affairs with a focus on security and intelligence studies, wanting to work in technology and being a part of engineering camps when I was a kid. And then really just focus on women in my own experience of a woman traveling internationally and just, wanting to feel safe in the world, help other women feel safer. All of this was just starting to merge together. And so then it was really about how do we create, how do I create that really serves this mission and purpose, where we think about security is important. It is important physically, it is important digitally, but it's also important emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. How do we bring this into the world? And so I left that time in India and Nepal with really that focus and that goal. And I came back later that year, incorporated the business. And then it was about 18 months later where I left was working full time to start and continue this business full time. And it was never something that I envisioned I would do. I never thought that in my life that I would run a business, but it seemed that in order to live this mission and purpose, that this was the path that had to happen, and this was the path I had to take.
So you've been at this for a while now.
Yes.
What have you seen in the cybersecurity world? You're very hunkered down in the financial area, the insurance area, and this isn't going away by any means. I mean, it's something that is here to stay. What have you seen grow, and then where do you see this going in our future?
Yeah, cybersecurity, probably one of the biggest levers in cybersecurity over the past few years has been in the area of regulations and regulatory focus. And this is because cybersecurity is such an important issue, an important topic. And so in financial services, insurance, and a lot of other areas, companies have to ensure that they're abiding by specific standards. And in doing this, that means that they have to spend more money on cybersecurity, they have to hire more people, they may have to report to regulatory bodies. And this isn't just in the United States, but it's across the world. And so, and a lot of this, of course, is in response to the cyber incidents and the data breaches that we've seen. And so I see that there will be an increased amount of regulation. In many cases, I don't see that stopping. I think that, and part of that is because in the United States, there really isn't a strong federal cybersecurity regulation. There isn't a strong cybersecurity or privacy regulation. The United States has not really done a lot in that area. They really have allowed the states to move forward. But I think what's happening and what's becoming clear, particularly with nation state attacks that are happening on businesses, is that the federal government is going to have to do something. And they're going to have to do more than what they're doing now. And I think what we've seen also coming out of Europe. So Europe has the General Data Protection Regulation. We have seen companies like Facebook and Google get fined billions of dollars. And at the end of the day, if we have other parts of the world that are fining US companies at that amount, you better believe the United States is going to start paying attention to what's happening there. And they'll start to, whether they decide to do strong regulations as strong as that, but they will be paying attention, and they have started to pay attention more around privacy concerns. So it's I find that this will increase, and I from the business side, and for someone who is leading one of these companies as well, is at the end of the day they are at risk. These companies have learned in many cases the hard way about what it means to not have a secure company. So vendor risk is something that continues to be a big challenge. How does a company ensure that its entire supply chain is secure? And that's one of the biggest levers as well from the business side that has really caused leaders to pay attention to this, and not just security leaders, but C-level leaders as well as boards.
So how does your company work, PurePoint? Do you go in and work with your clients on when there's a problem? Do people call you in? I always say it's always great to know we call people in before we have a problem, right? So you go to the doctor to be well, not when you're sick. But
right.
What do you actually see happen?
Yeah, so I'm seeing a couple different things. One, I'm seeing leaders that are proactive and are saying, yes, we want more help and we want support. And I find that, believe it or not, that these are the female senior leaders in the organization. I find that female leaders think differently about security. They do tend to want to be more proactive versus reactive, and they're willing to do what they can to make an argument for the budget, to secure a budget for cybersecurity and for other areas of the business of business in general, that they think is important for the future of their business. And so we've been able to go ahead and support companies in insurance and financial services, technology, consulting, with really helping them build out a cybersecurity strategy and plan. And so we really, part of our core expertise is coming in and building and maturing cybersecurity programs. We've also, with that, have helped companies move through regulatory visits. So as organizations have had to respond to regulators, we've been able to come in and support them at one of their most challenging times to be able to deliver on that for them. And then there, of course, there are companies that do tend to be a bit more reactive. So they call after a breach has happened or after some other major incident. And so coming in and supporting them during that time is what we do too. And a lot of times it can be simply helping them to respond to a particular need that they have. But other times that can also mean adding in the maturing of their cybersecurity and privacy program so that they overall have good operations and feel confident. And a good piece of this is also just, supporting the leadership team in this, because we all as leaders have a responsibility for security. It isn't just one person within the organization. And so coming in and really doing and spending time with the leadership team and helping them to really understand what their role is in security. So what is the role of the HR leader in security? If there's a chief human resource officer, what is the role of someone who is a CEO, someone who's a CFO, someone who is even a chief of staff? For all of these individuals, what is their role and how can they drive it within their own space within the organization?
So it's interesting that you said women are more conscious of this.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. And you said women are, in general, more proactive in here versus reactive. In working in your niche demographic, what have you seen? Oh goodness, I have so many questions to ask Jessica. I'm slowing my own mind down. What have you seen? So is it the women on the leadership team? Does it take a lot of coercing of getting everybody else on board, or when presented, then it just wasn't in their vision, that the rest of the leadership team, it wasn't in their vision, so they didn't know? Or is it really pushing, going to bat and making this happen and getting everybody on board? What is there any, does it get split down the middle, or is there, talk to me here.
Yeah, so I find that I find that it's women that are making the decisions that this has to happen, and when it has to happen. So particularly those that, again, are being proactive. For those that are being proactive, so some people, like let's say there's a regulation that a company has to abide by. Well, it still may be ambiguous or unclear. So maybe someone else is willing to wait for more information, or to maybe wait and see how their company peers are doing and handling this new regulation. Well, I found in my experience that leaders within the female leaders within the organization are doing their research right away. They're thinking already about the impact and the ripple effects of this, how this can impact the organization, and they're thinking about how we can impact this now. They're taking the approach that this is important and we need to deal with it now, versus I don't know, maybe we can wait and see a few months and see what happens. And it's been really interesting to see that, for sure, without a doubt. And I find that whether you're in a general counsel role, or whether you're in a CFO role, or whether you're in the CEO role, because these are a lot of the decision makers in this, right? What's the budget going to be? What is our legal requirements around this? What do I need to do? Because I'm ultimately responsible as a CEO. So these roles are very heavy in this, and I find that when there are women in these roles, that there's more forward movement in a proactive way to really ensure that cybersecurity needs are being met within an organization in a proactive way.
And what has, I always curious, what has surprised you, if anything, as you've been building your own company out in this cyber area?
I think that what surprised me and what continues to surprise me is, as I mentioned earlier, we're a business, that was created with a specific intention in mind. And I find that because we are a women-owned business, and because we are a minority-owned business, that I do have a lot of women leaders that do connect with me wanting security within their organization. But I think I'm also surprised with some of the movement leaders that we have, some of the nonprofit organizations that we work with, how many of them have really do need very, very specific and unique support. And many of them, as they're trying to get some of the support that they need, aren't able to find it. And so I think that which shows me that there is a need for security across the board, and that, again, it doesn't matter. This isn't just for the large businesses or the businesses that have to be accountable to a regulator. This really is for all businesses, and for organizations of all sizes. And I think that more and more leaders are becoming conscious of this, and I think that that's something that's really important. And I think it's something that it's something that I've always felt was important, but I think it's something that does just continue to surprise me, the way people think about their own security, whether it's personal or professional, and how people want to see impact in their organization or in their personal life as a result of it.
So I have to ask, because, we're thinking about big business, my mind goes to big business, but what about the little guys?
Yeah. So the challenge is that this is a reality for them, and it's changing very much. I was actually talking with someone a few months back, and she had a team of 6 people. And she said that to work with her ideal clients, which were some of these huge, big businesses out there, top, 500 businesses and Forbes and Fortune, is that they had to make it through their vendor risk assessment. And as a 6-person company, they have to answer a questionnaire that's like, 150, 200 questions. How do they do that and show their security posture? And this is exactly what's changing for smaller businesses, is that they have to, like, they're part of a supply chain. At some point, they're a part of a supply chain, and that they absolutely have to be responding to this. And what's interesting too is that nonprofits, if they're going to receive funding from a corporate partner, they too have to go through these questionnaires and show and prove that they are a secure organization. And this is one of those things that's really showing how security and the responsibility of security is changing in the world, that we are all interconnected, that we are all at some point connected to each other in some way, and that there is a responsibility and accountability that is coming down for smaller organizations. And so that's why it's so important for them to have an understanding of why this matters.
I think that is so important. And it's a perspective I didn't think about, because being as a smaller company myself in the scale of big to small companies, I'll always say, I look at small businesses under 10 million. Then there's small boutique business, really small businesses, but small businesses who are serving larger businesses, nonprofits that are working with corporate, how we have to be ready for their cyber playing field. It's a really great perspective and a really great piece of insight.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that it really is kind of, it's one of those things that's changing so quickly. And it's something that all organizations, all leaders just have to be thinking about and being prepared for. If I was talking to someone who's an executive coach, and she's working with large companies, and she's thinking and she's being asked questions about security. And another situation, she wasn't being asked about security, but she wanted to ensure that the conversations that she was having with this executive absolutely remained confidential, because it could be damaging for this executive if they got out. So people are just in general are thinking differently about data, how they're interacting with their own data, how they're interacting with the data of their clients. And this is something we can expect to absolutely see as we continue throughout this decade. And we can also see just a speed at which we interact with technology. Technology is going to change so much over the next 9 years as we go to 2030. And I think that this increased awareness that's happening now is absolutely critical, but it's going to be even more important as the years progress. So.
I think that's brilliant and so true. And I love the different perspectives.
Yeah.
Jessica, how can our listeners and our listeners overall continue to learn more about you, follow you? I know you're always on the up and coming. What I adore about you, you are visioning years ahead when you're talking 2020, 2030. And that's a huge, piece of success of a business leader is when you're not just looking at a year or two, but you're truly visioning ahead. So how can our listeners follow you and know more about you?
Yes, well, you could come to our website, which is www.the-purepoint, PurePoint.com. And you can sign up for our newsletter. We have some exciting things that are going to be coming out over the next few months, and we'd love to make sure that you're aware of that. But just being a part of our newsletter, being part of our community is a way to stay updated on all of these changes that are happening, not only in security, but also technology and how that impacts security for the future. And then, of course, we have tips on how you can stay safe, or on how your company can also stay safe as well.
Well, I appreciate that information. I know I'm going to be following you. And, listeners, I said I wanted to know more. A bunch of years ago, I went to the bank and I went to withdraw $100, that quick $100. And my card, they wouldn't do it. They took my card, and I go into the bank a little crazy woman, so to speak. And said, hey, with this problem, and they pulled up my information and they escorted me to the back. And then I knew the problem was not a small problem.
Right.
And somebody had hacked into all my accounts.
Wow.
And the bank shut it down.
Wow.
Now, I felt very, very lucky, very, very fortunate. But when I started sharing that story, I started hearing about people who are in much worse situations than I was. And I was very well protected. And because of that experience, I've always wanted to continue to learn and stay ahead of the game. So thank you, listeners, in joining me on my learning in learning more about women in the cybersecurity space and why it is important to all business leaders to continue to learn about this. Jessica, thank you for joining me again today.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. And thank you so much for sharing that story at the end. I mean, I feel like so many people listening are going to be able to resonate with that.
Yeah. We cannot bury our head in the sand. We cannot say we're a small business. We cannot say it's not about me or I'm protected elsewhere. We have to take the responsibility of our own learning. So listeners, what I say at the end of her success story is take a moment and think about what is your biggest takeaway from stopping in to listen today. Identify it, and then put down in those notes, what's the action you're going to take for yourself, your organization, your business, and as a leader? Are you going to pass this information? Are you going to do something about it to protect yourself? Are you going to check your own policies? Are you going to check your own systems? Make sure if you're showing up to listen, you're listening with a purpose, an intention, and a result.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Love it.
And stay tuned for more information. If you're loving this series on cybersecurity, leave us a little note about it. Share it forward with your colleagues and friends. Please, I take this information and take it forward. Thank you for joining me again, and see you next week on more Her Success Story.